Out jumped the goblins. Big goblins, great ugly-looking goblins, lots of goblins. Before you could say rocks and blocks.
The difference between goblins and orcs in Tolkien's Middle-earth is not necessarily a difference of species. It's really a reminder that The Hobbit started as a children's book, and goblins are a little less terrifying than orcs.
Goblins are just orcs, as presented to a child. For the movies, we chose to take that distinction and use it to imply that there are lots of different types of orcs, and goblins are just one particular type.
Peter wanted the goblins to be these underground-dwelling, wretched creatures that have no respect for life above the surface.
They are this sort of hillbilly race. And the mere fact that they all kind of do look related is quite disturbing.
They interbreed, they're unhealthy, and we wanted just to make them as scary as possible.
So when we knew we were going to get to work on The Hobbit, I think all of us naturally thought that the goblins would follow similar lines to the goblins that we saw in Moria in film 1 of The Lord of the Rings. But that wasn't to be the case at all, because as we started to design, Pete said, no, I want something different. I need more. I want to see something new and fresh.
He definitely liked the idea that they were smaller creatures. These guys would definitely be their own little breed that have left to their devices for hundreds of years under those caves.
We took our lead from the idea of subterranean creatures, strange mutated creatures that live in caves and they don't see sunlight and they kind of evolve in a slightly different way.
Based off that, we essentially came up with an idea that potentially these characters probably had some form of skin disease.
And therefore they're putrid, translucent, smelly, horrible characters.
We went through a lot of different looks. We tried axolotls, salamandery, newt-looking, unborn, really horrific things. We had stuff like with the teeth and really piranha-looking goblins and more ferocious things.
I think we did more illustrations for the goblins than anything else in the movie.
Elements of them are great. Like that guy in the middle there is pretty scary. I just want to find out what it is that's making it look like a dog, especially from the side. And it is something to do with the squareness of the snout, isn't it? It's the length. It's the length and the squareness. I mean, why don't you try a version where you're keeping a lot of the essence of what we've done, but you're just taking the snout away and making it like a flat face, just like a more of a regular sort of a monkey face sort of thing.
There was a reference to goblins as having a sort of a similar physiology to the apes of the south.
A little bit simian-like. We were trying to play it with the longer sort of arms. They definitely felt more like some sort of monkey.
We preferred this guy.
No, I do too.
Oh, good.
I prefer that guy.
The goblins were always a problem for us to try to figure out, and it's not how things look, and it's not how well things are designed. The primary problem is just the physicality of it, that if we were going to put goblins on screen, we were going to have either performers in costumes or do it, some other way.
Peter Jackson wanted the anatomy to be outside what is humanly possible. He wanted it larger, greater, more grotesque.
One of the questions that I first asked Pete at the very beginning of the design process, will it be physical or will it be digital? Because if it is digital, it doesn't have to comply to the very strict number of movement points that the human body has. And Pete felt it was still worthy to have a go building them.
Watch out for your back.
So we brought in Terry Notary, and he trained a group of 20 or 30 performers in goblin movement.
When we had our first meeting, Pete said, rats in a sewer. That's what you got to think about, okay? So that's like, great, okay? Boo, there's so much there.
Goblins have no foundation in their legs, and they live from point to point. They live in a fear-based society, so they're like these little electromagnetic balls of energy. So they have no foundation, so the legs are...
What I'll do is I'll come up with a technique, and before I get too far, I'll go and move around as that character for Pete.
And they're opportunists, so they...
I spent, a long time with Terry talking about the way they'd move and the sort of pack mentality they'd have.
They work like rats, and
We were literally only a few weeks out from the first day that the Goblins were going to shoot, and we didn't have a design yet. That was locked down. So I went and saw Pete, and I had a chat with him about this challenge.
We've done a round of maquettes
A lot of these are just Halloween-y devil type things. They're not a mutant underground race. I mean, it would be great to see a bunch of maquettes like this that were ratty, flea-ridden, diseased.
Okay.
Make them more freakish.
What I did at that point is I rushed back to the workshop and gathered all the sculptors around me, and we did 13 third-scale busts over a 2-day period of just insane ideas around mutations, growths, horn-like things coming out of the head, asymmetry, disease, leprosy, bloating, elephantitis, and ran them down to Pete.
Yeah. Okay. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Oh, thank you.
And that started the process of building the Goblins. It's a great tribute to the team at the workshop that built this cast of crazy goblin characters in 7 weeks, such an unbelievable short length of time.
So back on Lord of the Rings, the Goblins were done for the most part as physical creations. And I think there was an intent to try to hold on to that aesthetic for The Hobbit. And shooting started on set.
And action!
Look with puzzlement, it's nice and still. But the heaviness of the suits is limiting their movement, and so everything that Terry was working out with them, that's not really coming through anymore.
And cut.
So Peter made the decision that for the Goblins, in a lot of cases, we would go completely digital.
Pete wanted to see what the Goblin would look like in the mocap and showed him some different movements, went through a whole range of runs and walks and little character moments so that Pete sees a nice range of movement.
And then, of course, when we needed to do more of a pack,
And action!
it's better if you can capture them as a group, because then any interactions and they have to kind of move around each other and stuff, and then you've got a series of motions that works together.
And we could use that little thing like in this hut, or in...
Yeah. We could have them being much more violent and aggressive towards the dwarves, which is something Pete would always say. He's like, okay, let's make them move faster, let's make them jumping, let's make them kind of climbing over each other like this crazy mosh pit of goblins.
So we're basically creating a library of goblins and different personalities, different hero goblins, different fights, different ways of being killed, different ways of chasing, different ways of striking, pursuits, little gestures, little group moments.
And then specific hero motions or things that are too hard to animate in a realistic fashion. I just hope we don't break the goblins. So all the capture that we did last week is on the system. So the fact that we have this library of motions means that later on when we've got to get these shots out real quick, we've got the motion to draw from. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You were talking about the timing of these guys, which I've had to play around with.
These guys seem about right.
Yeah.
And you might want to make the goblins that are jostling these guys bigger, like
Yeah.
especially him.
Yeah.
Peter wanted to make sure that all the goblins were very unique and that they looked very different from one another.
What was great is that because you had this physical suit that had been made, we had almost immediate approval of what these creatures were to look like, because we would scan the mold and then we would use that as a target to make the digital versions.
PJ has asked us to get more of disgusting kind of look to the bodies. He really wanted their lips to look like they've kind of been chewed away. They have a lot of herpes sores, really a lot of disgusting things like that.
Because they are vitamin deprived, they have bad skin, they're breaking out in rashes and sores. I mean, that was all part of making them feel like these creatures never see sunlight.
The disease aspect unfortunately did take some research, yes.
It's actually pretty horrible what you can find on the internet.
Herpes sores and scabs and open sores.
Sometimes you love Google, sometimes you don't.
We used all that kind of reference and got that into the characters.
We also had some software we were working on that allowed us to take the faces from one goblin and blend it with faces of other goblins. So with the blending of faces and the different body types, we could do hundreds or thousands, trying to make them as unique as possible.
The idea behind the Goblins was to really have this feeling of nastiness. But then, of course, every time the Goblin King shows up...
Action! And the king is stepping on you now! Yeah!
They're completely cowed by him.
Who would be so bold as to come armed into my kingdom?
There in the shadows on a large flat stone sat a tremendous goblin with a huge head, and armed goblins were standing round him.
There's conjecture on what the Goblin King actually is too. You know, that he is actually some incarnate spirit of evil, in the same way like a Balrog maybe.
He's known as the Great Goblin because he is actually a different creature altogether from the goblins.
A gigantic and repulsive figure. And yet, a figure of great charm.
The Great Goblin is yet another one of those amazing Tolkien characters that you lift out of the book and try and realise. And it was in fact an Alan Lee drawing that Peter brought in to spur on the first ideas.
I was looking at this as I was writing the script. I just think the Great Goblin should be like a really grotesque fat guy. He's like a sort of sultan of goblins. Yeah. He's just some big bloody fat twit who needs to get his head chopped off.
Peter's brief was to make him as disgusting as possible, as sort of vile as possible.
Abominations, mutations, deviations.
But still, like all great characters, find an entry into why he behaves the way he does.
Peter and Andrew really worked together for quite an intense period of time, working up this character.
Well, initially we wanted to start off with one of those bedridden, obese cases that he just wouldn't look like he'd moved ever. He's just a part of the furniture, as it were, just this giant, grotesque blob.
But one of the things that Peter was absolutely adamant about is that he couldn't be like Jabba the Hutt. He couldn't just be this big, heavy character that can't move out of his chair.
So we bulked him up a little bit, we got some big shoulders, and we try to keep that very simian, ape-like quality to him, where he could stand on his knuckles if he wanted to, and move with his hands.
So he's this huge, blubbery, heavy weight, walks with this staff.
One of the earlier maquettes, his crown that looked like he had made and he was very proud of, and it was a little spiky, bony sort of crown. And he has this weird staff that he lords over his goblins with, but I imagine these two little heads that he dangled off the staff to have been old conquests that he had kept as a bit of a reminder that he was bad once.
With every character that we design for Peter, he is always trying to seek a defining trait, the iconic signature of that character. And in the case of the Great Goblin, it is the goiter.
I do like the idea of a neck sack, you know, like a sort of a goiter type thing, because I like the idea that it can puff and swell when he talks.
I kind of looked at it as a metaphor for a beard, kind of made him feel kingly in a sort of very grotesque way.
We decided to have part of his wattle be this really grotesque tumor in there. And that was kind of pushing up towards the surface of the skin. And just like on your knuckles, where that skin kind of goes kind of pale there, you could see the veins pushing up towards the surface of it. There was one time when I think we got a little bit too gross with him, and we had to pull back just a bit. It's PG-13 rating, PG-13 rating.
This is a practical silicon version of the Goblin King's wattle. And the reason we made this is to give the creatures and animation department some inspiration so they can get an idea of how the flesh would actually move in reality.
That goiter looks pretty good. Mike's been experimenting with the idea that it has a bulbous tumour within it, and we were thinking it would be cool if that slid around underneath the surface of the skin, just to make it really gross.
You look at that character and you then start to think, what would his voice sound like? And then obviously trying to think of an actor who can bring that to life. And we'd always been fans of Barry Humphries.
I think one of the most inspired pieces of casting was Barry Humphries as the Great Goblin, which was Fran's idea.
You know, the Great Goblin, if there's a Barry Humphries character that we were thinking of, it wasn't Dame Edna Everage, it was Les Patterson. We wanted Barry to channel the Les Patterson side of himself.
I said to Jackson, what does my character look like? And they showed me a little plastic figurine of such ugliness that I, who am used to horrible sights since I'm now in the November of my life, that I thought, this is something for Dan Aykroyd, for Danny DeVito, perhaps, in a fat suit.
Barry was in his 70s when he did this role, and I can tell you he's a lot fitter than I am, and launched himself into motion capture with great abandon.
I came to this project with two serious disadvantages. First, I'd never read a word of Tolkien. Oh, yes, I know all about you. Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, king under the mountain. Second, I'd never done this kind of acting. You get covered with these dots. We don't know why.
And now the classic kiss, a lip pucker.
Lip pucker. That's not the first time you've done that, is it?
No.
And we've got it. And lip stretch and others.
If I were a 12-year-old, I would understand all the technology of this movie. I always thought motion capture was something you did when you were taking a specimen to the doctor. Which of these tasty tiddlers thinks he is the leader?
I mean, I did my scenes with Barry Humphries. We did the mocap stuff. I mean, what a privilege it was. I mean, he's sort of, I suppose, a legend because he is so funny.
For breakfast, I always enjoy the contents of my navel.
If it's more information you're wanting, I'm the one you should speak to. It's like this. We were on the road. Well, it wasn't so much a road as a path. Actually, it wasn't even that, come to think of it. It was more of a track.
Shut up!
That was fantastic. Let's try a couple more of those.
I hadn't really allowed for the genius of our director, Peter Jackson.
What's this? A map. It's like, you know,
Yes. What's this? A map. I smell a quest. A quest for the mountain in the east.
Let's just do a couple of reactions to your arm being chopped off.
Oh.
Here we go. And action.
Ooh.
Very good.
I've just been astounded by his ability, particularly to put me at my ease, playing this grotesque character.
Let's wrap on Barry Humphries.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for your support.
That's true.
Something to tell your grandchildren about. Now that I'm embedded in the Middle Earth, I'm looking forward, really, to reading every single thing that this long-deceased academic wrote. However, the more I have read in recent days, the more I realize that this extraordinary range of characters confected by Tolkien have come to life in a suburb of Wellington, New Zealand.
I don't know if you necessarily need to look back at Thorin there. It seems a bit too obvious.
Okay.
Our job as animators was to preserve that performance and have it come through on the king. You need to sort of see that spark of performance that was there when Barry performed it.
Nobody, really.
Just try to make it a really clear nobody, really, you know.
Just bigger.
Yeah.
Nobody, really.
So Barry's sort of the driving force, and as animators, we're the guardians of that performance and making sure it's transposed effectively onto the king. It's never a one-to-one match, in fact. It's always an artful kind of, okay, I'm looking at Barry, I'm looking at the king, are we getting enough of his eye movement? Or maybe we need to open his lids even wider to make him look intense, or maybe we need more quiver in his face to get his cheeks moving, or to get the most out of him.
I know someone who would pay a pretty price for your head. Just your head.
Boom. Yeah. See if you can soften that for me. You definitely see that moment where it goes from being just, you know, stuff moving around on the screen to stuff that's actually a living, breathing thing now, and it's going to engage with the audience.
Just a head. Nothing attached.
Barry Humphries made the most perfect Goblin, and he played it with wonderful relish.
What are you going to do now, wizard? I've never been disemboweled before, but it's a pretty nasty death, and I think one that will be greeted by audiences with joy, but dismay, to think that they won't see the character again. That'll do it. I've tried, as a matter of fact, to bring out the lovable side of my character. I don't remember eating this, and this attempt has been a total failure.